Shavua Tov. We're here on Daf Yud Amid Beis, and we're up to Omer Shlokish, which is towards the top of the page, about 4 lines down from the top. Amalei Reish Lakish LeRabbi Yochanan. Now, the Masechet here offers us a somewhat elaborate introduction to this new sugya, which is a hemshech of the previous sugya. I'd like to go through this introduction with you, and hopefully that'll give us a very easy takeoff. He says the following. The Mishnah mentioned even af nashim shenisu remeis be'isur. According to Levi, that was Levi's breakthrough, and that's why he asked the question about anusas aviv, why it wasn't included under imo as a separate category, number 16. His premise was that even if there was nesuin be'isur, it would still be included in the Mishnah. Im hein erva al hayavam harei hein pochos es tzarosei. Because at the end of the day, Levi argues that even if there was an nesuin be'isur, it's still a situation in which we have an erva, and the law is that an erva patas the tzara. That's all we need to pass the candidacy exam to be included in the Mishnah. Halacha biyadenu shali achar shecholatz hayavam liyavimto paka zikos. Now he says the following: Yesh lo lemishnah l'shanos od isha poteres es tzaros. Now Reish Lakish argues, based on the premise of Levi, we should add another case, another category of a woman who patas of hatzah, and that's called Yevama Shecholza, meaning after the Yevama received Chalitza, that itself should now create a status of Tsaras Erva on the other Tsaras. You have 2 women who were married to one brother. He died, they both fell for evil. And the surviving brother gave chalitza to one of the two ladies, one of the 2 tsaros. The other tsara should now be included under the category of tsaras erev. And halacha b'yadeinu shali achar shecholatz hayavam liyavimto paka zikasa. Once the yavam, we'll call him Shimon, gave chalitza to the yavama, then it's no longer ziko. Me'ata now. Harehi asura. If we go back to the old Isur of Eishes Ach, that Erev was only removed in event that he would be miyabim for the sake of the mitzvah of Yibum. But if he chooses Chalitza, then we go back to the Isur Ereva of Eishes Ach. Me'ata harehi asura. And now we have to analyze what's the status of the Erev of Eishes Ach vis-a-vis Shimon, when a minute ago, before the Chalitza, she was not included in that Erev. In other words, the Torah commanded him to be miyabim. After the Yibum, does she go back to her original state of Eishes Ach with a chiyuv kares? Once there was a heter on that Isur Erev of Eishes Ach, does it go back to the Isur, to the original status? Ach, he says, Ein chozer oleo ke Isur kari shel Eishes Ach shelo b'makom mitzvah. I mean, there's a case of Eishes Ach where there was no mitzvah. Like, for example, if she was an islandess or something along that long. And if there was no Zikas Yibum, and there was no mitzvah of Yibum, that's called Shalom Makom Mitzvah, then clearly that's a full-fledged Erev of Eishes Ach. It never lent itself to a matir of mitzvahs Yibum. But here in this case, we're not talking Shalom Makom Mitzvah, but rather the opposite. But Makom Mitzvah just said he chose what? Chalitza. He opted for Chalitza. Asura hi be'isur lav bilvad. There's only an Isur lav. Now, the Meiri is quoted here in the footnote, again, to elaborate on this introduction, because the premise here in the Gemara is we have an Ervas Eishes Ach without kares, which is an oxymoron of some sort. It says that Isur Zehu be Sodo Isur Eishes Ah. In other words, what's the Isur? Elashakosiv Hotzio Michomer Koretz. Vemido Kechomer Shalom. This is the Meiri in his introduction to Masechet Yevamot. And he writes that after a woman falls for Yibum, if that Isur Eishes Ah goes back, it's Choser V'nir, then it will not be the same severity of an Isur Koretz, but rather the Torah is creating a brand new Isur Lav of Eishes Ach. Again, it's still Eishes Ach, but it's not Eishes Ach of a Koretz, but rather an Eishes Ach of a Lav. And the Ramban apparently was not happy with this approach. And in his Hasagas on Sefer HaMitzvahs, Mitzvah Yudal, with the Mitzvah Yimum, he writes that this is a brand new Isur and has nothing to do with Eishes Ach. Chalutzaso is Asura Olive, simply by virtue of the fact that she's a Chalutza. I mean, just as a memory device to remember the Ramban, we're going to compare it to a Kohen. It's like a Kohen can't marry neither a Grusha nor a Chalutza. So for this halacha of Chalutza, Visa Chalutza, everyone's considered a Kohen. We're all Kohen. And therefore, Chalutza comes under a new Isur. It's a Chidush Isur and not an extension of the old Isur of Eishes. And apparently what bothers Ramban is that if it's the old Isur of Eishes, then there should be a Chiv Karetz. But the very fact that it's only a Lav, that's proof positive. We're talking about a brand new Isur. And what generates that Isur? What status generates that? The Chalutza. A Chalutza is prohibited to the Yavam by virtue of the Chalitza. And Rabbi Yochanan, later on, is going to be of the opinion that Kol Achei Ames Asur B'Lav. That now, as a result of the fact that this woman, what should we call her, Rachel, right? Rachel fell for Yibum for all the brothers. And once that happened, there's potentially Yibum on the part of any one of those brothers. So therefore the Matir to remove the Isur Eishes Ach was Chal on all the brothers. And therefore says Rabbi Yochanan, if after Chalitza, one of the brothers gets up and does Chalitza, then the Isur Eishes Ach is a brand new Isur Eishes Ach, according to Ramban, or according to the Meiri, it's a different branch or extension of Eishes Ach, but it's not the original, and it's an Isur Lav, and that Isur Lav is Chal on all the brothers. That's the sheet of Rabbi Yochanan later on, which we didn't get to yet. Reish Lakish, on the other hand, disagrees with Rabbi Yochanan, and he says that as far as the Choletz is concerned, he is in a drop-down position, and we lower the Isur Eishes Ach to a level of a Lav. Aval al shara achim he chozeres lehi aser be'isur kares ke'eishes ach shelo b'makom mitzvah. That's Reish Lakish. Reish Lakish holds that as far as the other brothers are concerned, they didn't really have the mitzvah. Now again, exactly how this works, who do we choose? Let's say, again, just for the sake of the that the oldest brother has the brunt of the obligation of Yibum. The other brothers are now outside the mitzvah of Yibum. If the brother, the oldest, will call the B'char, he decides for Chalitz instead of Yibum, then his Eishes Ach is reduced to this brand new category of a Lav of Eishes Ach. But as far as the other brothers are concerned, so argues Reish Lakish, they never really stood up to the plate as far as the mitzvah of Yibum is concerned, and therefore the original matir to remove Eishes Ach was never set in motion, and we're back to the original Eishes Ach as a full-fledged Isur Erva of Karetz. So the Machlokas Rabbi Yochanan Reish Lakish seems to revolve around this problem, whether or not she falls for Yibum for all the brothers. One brother was the one who stepped up to the plate and gave her Chalitza, but the matir to remove Eishes Ach is relevant to all the brothers. Hence, Rabbi Yochanan holds that the Isur of a Lav is the worst, the worst case scenario as far as the other brothers are concerned. It can't go beyond an Isur Lav. Whereas Reish Lakish holds no. when a woman falls for Yibum, it's not that there is an equal, uniform nefila for Yibum for all the brothers. One brother, we'll call him the Bechar for after the time being, is obligated in a special way in the mitzvah of Yibum, and he can benefit, so to speak, from the matir of Yibum of Zikasim to remove the Yisrael. The other brothers never had that matir. They were never included in the mitzvah of Yibum. Hence, the Yisrael Shach is a full-fledged Easter card. Amalei Reish Lakish Rabbi Yochanan Lil Levi Tiyomar Inami Ktani. Levi, who says that Inami, meaning as far as all the other brothers are concerned, Ktani, it says that now there's an Easter Kares. Then listening, why did the Mishnah add another category? Number, I don't know what to call it, 16, I think we should call it 17. Why? Because we're going now according to Levi. Levi already added number 16. And that was Imo Anusas Aviv. But now we should add Chalutza, Acholetz Liavinto, Bechazar V'Kitsha, Umeis below one. So the Yevamot, let's call her Rachel, fell for Yibum to Shimon, Levi, and Yehuda. Shimon gave Rachel Chalitza, and then he married, and then he died childless. So now Rachel is falling for Yibum not because of the Zik of Reuven, that Zik was already removed through the Chalitza of Shimon, but by virtue of her marriage to Shimon. But the only thing, it's an illegal marriage. It's illegitimate. Shimon violated an Easter, but Levi's not impressed by that because Levi already added Imo Anusas Aviv, which, as we saw, could only work out with Stei Achils and all that in a case of an Easter. So therefore, we should add Chalitza, Acholetz Liavinto, V'Kitsha, Umeis below Ponim, the Migu Di'i Asura, Tzarasa Nami Asura. And once again, the Masechet gives us a long introduction here to the kasha that Reish Lakish asked of Rabbi Yochanan about Levi in the case of Chalutz. Nafla Lifnei Achiv Liyibu. So now Rachel, the wife of Shimon, because Shimon went ahead, he married her illegally, and then he died. Now she falls to Yibum, this Rachel, to the other brothers. We'll call him Levi. He goes, Reuven v'Shimon Levi Yehuda. He has four brothers. Nasa Shimon es Sarah, Levi Nasa es Rivka. Umeis Levi below Bonim. V'nafla Rivka lifnei ha'achin liyibum. V'cholatz Shimon leRivka. V'nesra ola b'chach b'lav. V'ala achin nesra l'Reish Lakish. Right now, who's talking here? Who's raising this matter? Reish Lakish. And Reish Lakish himself holds that as far as the other brothers is concerned, it's like Shalom Makom Mitzvah, and therefore there's an Easter Kares of Eishes Av. B'kevat shepoka zikas hayom b'chalitzaso shel Shimon. Shimon, once he was choletz. What name does he give her? Sarah, am I right? Did I get that name right? He gives the name Sarah. No, he gives the name Rivka. Just a second. Okay, but Levi Nosas Rivka. Is Choseres Rivka Lios Ke'eshes Ach Sheyesh Lo Bonim. Meaning Shalom B'Makom Mitzvah. That's the Shita Reish Lakish. And that's the impact of Chalitza. Chazar Shiva V'Kitsha, Kiddush of Kiddushin, even though it's an illegitimate marriage, the halacha does recognize the validity of the marriage because Harei Kiddushin Tovsim B'Chayvei Lav. We don't accept Rabbi Akiva. Umei Shiva B'Lo Bonim and Aflu Nashit L'Fnei Echav Liyibu. Echav here in this case would be Levi and Yehuda. Shrei L'Shitas Reish Lakish Asura Hi Al Ha'achim Be'iser Erev HaGomer Shal Eishes Ach Shalom Makom Mitzvah Machmas Achar Rishon. B'im Kain Af tiftar es tsarasa min hachalitza umin hayibum. Shekein dina kechol harayas hashnus b'shasena demigu de I asura tsarasa nam asur. So he tells you to take a look at Sadi Beis, which is on the next page. He's got Reuven, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda, Achim. So this, if you, I don't know what photocopies you may or may not have, this is Yud Amid Beis, which we didn't get up to Yud Amid Beis, but that's where they published the diagram, and it's numbered Beis in brackets on the left column. So Reuven, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda, Achim. We're not up to there? All right, I don't think it's such a... And Vinasa Yehuda es Sarah es Rivka, Meis Yehuda below Banim, Naflu Nasha, Lifnei Echav Leyibu, Bechalatz Levi L'Sar, Bechaz of a kitchen. So Yehuda was married to Sarah and to Rivka. After his death, Levi gave chalitza to Sarah. After he gave chalitza to Sarah, he married Sarah. Be'isa lav, but nevertheless kedushin tovs. Now, if we hold like Reish Lakish, then with regard to Shimon and Reuven, Sarah is an Ashes with a Chiyuv Karetz because we view Shimon and Reuven once the Chalitza was implemented and the Zika was removed as if it were the original Erev of Ashes because it's Shalom Makom Mitzvah. Whenever we remove the Zika, then it becomes Ashes Shalom Makom Mitzvah with a full-fledged Isuk Karetz. And now, if we consider, now I don't know why it doesn't say that Levi was married to another woman. Just one second, did I miss that? Oh yeah, Levi Nasa as Rivka. Levi Nasa as Rivka means Yibum. Just one second. Levi Nasa. Gentlemen, you want to do me a favor and read this out for me? You can. You don't have to be full. Read this. I could probably read it, but I don't know. I think it was a big fashel on that part. They blackened it. No? Doesn't it make it so much more difficult? Yeah. I don't know why they don't test these things out with someone from the street. No? If not, then I actually always mean to bring in a magnifying. We can make that a magnifying copy. I'll tell you what happens, Jeff. That's even less. Take a look at some of your other pages. No? Want to try? But I tell you the truth, if it's hard, let's just go on because I think from the text itself, well, let's John, is it possible that you have a magnifying glass and you could read it for us? Mine?
I do.
Thanks. Okay, so John will read it out for us. Hopefully, maybe I'll turn this around and we'll be able to hear it. Again, Sarah, let me see from the picture itself, we know that Sarah was married to Yehuda, correct? That much we know. And Levi gave Chalitza to Sarah. So she becomes Chalitzasa, which we said was an Isser La, as far as Levi is concerned. But the status of Sarah vis-a-vis Shimon and Ruvain is that of Eishes Achiv Shlomo Kamitz. That's an Isser. Don, you're able to read that out loud?
Sorry for the beginning?
No, just that dark part of Tzadi Beis. I think it's Harei Sarah. Yeah, those are the words that we.
Harei Sarah Asuya al Levi Belav.
Okay, so that much we know. Sarah is Chalutzaso of Levi, and therefore she's alive.
Kimoshe Kasav Ashelo Yivna Es Beisochiv. Kivin Shalabana.
Kivin Shalabana should lo Yivna. Right, the Gemara is going to have a drasha. We didn't get to it yet. That Kivin Shalabana should lo Yivna. That once he gave her chalitza, he can't be miyavim more after. So that's according to Ramban a separate lav, and according to the Niri, it's somehow a subcategory of Eishes.
About Rivka the Levi, the Shitas Resh Lakish Asur Bekores, Shekiven Shepoka Zikas Ayibun, the Chaliyatzasa Shosoro, Chazor Rivka Lios Keishes Och Sheyesh Lo Bonim, Asur Bekores.
So we're focused now on Rivka. I'm not exactly sure why he shifts from Sarah to Rivka, because L'chora, what he's saying here about Rivka is exactly the case for Sarah as well. But in any event, the bottom line is that according to Reish Lakish, we have an Isur Kares of Eishes Ach because of what? Because it's like a case of Shalom B'Makom Mitzvah. Is that correct? Let's just see. Yeah, so that's as far as Rivka is. It's interesting. He doesn't say Shalom B'Makom Mitzvah. He calls it Eishes Ach Sheyesh Lo Banim, meaning that there was no Nefil of the Yibam. I don't know why I guess that embellishes it a little, it makes it a little clear. Okay, let's go on.
Let's see. Where did I stop that?
Mishum. I think you're up to the word Mishum. Now that you're reading it, I'm beginning to see it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mishum Sharak the Gabi Chalutza Asmo Yosa Torah Sheyesh Rak La. 7. Yeah.
So that downgrade from a kares to lav is only as far as the chalutza itself. So you see, we made a mistake here. In other words, I was assuming that Rivka, insofar as she was married to Yehuda, she also gets downgraded vis-a-vis Levi to an Isser Lav. That's not true. The only one who gets downgraded from Kares to Lav, even though she was married to Levi's brother Yehuda, is only Sarah, because she was the one that he was Cholitz. And the Torah says about Chalutza that she goes down one notch from Kares to Lav. But Rivka, on the other hand, was never a Chalutza. So even as far as Levi is concerned, her status is that of an Eishes Ach Shalom B'Makom Mitzvah, which means a Chiyuv Kares Ma. I think that's what he's saying. What does he say about Rivka? Rivka Levi is Kares. Rivka Levi is Kares. Which way? Levi is the one who is Cholitz. He was cholei Sarah, but as far as Rivka is concerned, there's an Isur Karetz. As far as Sarah, it's very strange. When you think about the paradox of this situation, the two wives of Reuven, when Reuven dies and one of them, Levi, was choletz, then the different categories vis-a-vis the two wives. I mean, both two wives of Reuven. But the chalutza, which is Sarah in this case, she gets downgraded to a lav. Rivka, on the other hand, remains as a Eishes Ach Shelo B'Makom Mitzvah. And it's a Chiyuv Karetz, even vis-a-vis Levi. Okay, I wasn't aware of that. So that's important that we read this. Mishum Shabak L'Gabei Chalutza, where are you?
V'chein L'Gabei Shar Ha'achim, Reuven v'Shimon, Asuros bein Sarah ubein Rivka bekoreis.
So in other words, as far as the other brothers are concerned, that's Reuven and Shimon, there's no difference whatsoever between the status of Sarah and that of Rivka, because as far as they're concerned, Sarah is not a chalutza. It's like Einsteinian, relativity. Because relative to Levi, she's a chalutza, and she goes down. But relative to Reuven and Shimon, she's not a chalutza. Again, what the loveness of this, I don't know. Who is Levi? Why is he a yachson? Why did we give him the special right to implement chalutza? But maybe they choose it out. They spin the dice or whatever it is. And Levi got the first rights here, and he decided to give chalutza to Sarah. So that's a special relationship between Levi and Sarah, namely that we downgrade the lav of Eishes Ach from Kares down to a lav. But that has no relationship to Rivka, because Rivka was not a chalutza. Weiter.
Given Shepako has Zika b'chalitzas Levi, Chazer al Kulam Isar Ishesach.
So I think he's saying something important here that, again, I don't think I was aware of this. This whole story that Sarah and Rivka are Asuros, al Reuven v'Shimon be'Isur Kares, that's after the Chalitza. I would have said nothing changed here. He seems to be saying that you go in and you go out, if you follow what I mean. At one point in time, even vis-a-vis Reuven and Shimon, there was no Isur Karetz, obviously because they could have fulfilled the mitzvah of Yibum. But once the Chalitza was implemented, that now brings back, so to speak, the old Isur Eishes Ach with a full-fledged Karetz. It's really interesting because in the original state, she was in a Zika relationship to all the brothers. Now we remove that Zika, then vis-a-vis all the brothers, she's an Eishes Ach, Shelo B'Makom Mitzvah, which is really strange because a minute ago she was B'Makom Mitzvah, she had a Zika. Now, nothing changes except through the Hafkas HaZika, which means through the Chalitza, the brothers now, vis-a-vis the wives of Reuven, go back to the state of Erev Eishes Ach in a full sense, and she has a special status, Sarah, vis-a-vis Levi, of a chalutza. She walks around with a sign on her that says, I am a chalutza of Levi. And with regard to my status vis-a-vis Levi, I am an Isur of chalutza, we'll call it, according to the Ramban. Right? The Miri calls it the subcategory of Eishes. Okay, now what comes?
Well, the Rabbi Yochanan.
Now we got to see how Rabbi Yochanan disagrees with Reish Lakish.
Kivan shezika sayibum hi al kol neshei hameis, al kol ha'achim, נחשבים לוי ושרה כשלוחיהם של שאר האחים והנשים והאסורים כולם רק בלאו, שלא יבונה.
Beautiful. This is intuitively correct. No, Reish Lakish, Rabbi Yochanan really makes me feel much more calm and at home. Rabbi Yochanan is saying, what do you mean? There's some sort of special relationship of chalutza to Levi. That's not true. Rabbi Yochanan is saying you agree that once the chalitza was implemented, then all those who were included in the Zika and we suspended the Yisur Shach. Now we resurrect and we reactivate the Yisur Shach. That should apply to all the brothers uniformly. Now, the fact that Levi won the lottery, I don't know if he got the long stick or the short stick, but they gave him the chalitza to do. That's irrelevant. The Yisur Shach is equal to all the brothers. So that now both Sarah and Rivka have a full-fledged Yisur Shach to all the brothers, including Levi. It's so much simpler, it's so much smoother, according to Rabbi Yochanan. Wait a minute. No. I'm sorry. I think I said it a little bit I went too far. Yeah, it's true that all the brothers are uniform, according to Rabbi Yochanan. But in which direction? Are we resurrecting the original Isur of Shach with a full-fledged Isur? Of course, that we can't do. That's only a conceptual, theoretical possibility. But in reality, that's not a possibility, because once the Torah downgraded the Isur Karetz vis-a-vis Levi, because she's a halus of Levi, and that we learned from the Pasuk, then we have to, if we're applying that standard uniformly and consistently to the entire bias, to all the wives of Reuven and to all the brothers of Reuven, then we're all in the state of an Isur La. That's according to Rabbi Yochanan. Now, what else is there? There's something in brackets there?
Yeah. V'dim Elohim gam im lo chaza levi v'kidsha.
So wait, let's just think. We had a case which was very complicated, because Levi, after he gave chalitza to Sarah, then he decided to marry Sarah. And we said that we have to recognize the validity of that marriage because it's only chayv elav and kedusha tosam chayv elav. And then Levi died. But the truth is that according to Rabbi Yochanan, nothing really is affected at all by the marriage of Levi to Sarah, that illegitimate marriage. With or without it, the same dinim apply, that when Levi dies, she falls for Yibum to all the brothers as chayv elav, because the din of chalutza, downgrading the kares to a lav, applies to all the brothers equally, uniformly.
Ela sheim chaza v'kidesh kidsha v'meis, the Rabbi Yochanan chayeves b'chalitza. The chayv levin laven b'nei chalitza hem. Rabbi Lakish Petura. The chayv krisos she'enam b'nei chalitza v'libum. It says go to see the Siyurmin.
So now let's just see how he fears us, right? He's saying like this, that if Levi marries Sarah illegitimately, then according to Rabbi Yochanan, when Levi dies, then the brothers one of the brothers, we don't know who will volunteer, but one of the brothers has to give Sarah chalitza. Why? Because whenever you have a yibum situation of chayv elav, then we require chalitza. Let's assume it's the Rabbanan, but maybe it's the Oraisa, but whatever it is, we require chalitza. According to Reish Lakish, there's no chalitza because there's no nefil of yibum, because the status of Sarah vis-a-vis all the other brothers when Levi dies is that of an Shach, the original chayv krisos of Shach. But the only thing I don't understand is, why isn't there a new Zika as a result of her marriage to Levi? What am I missing here? According to Reish Lakish, what are we saying? Lakish doesn't fall for Yibum. But why doesn't she fall for Yibum by virtue of Levi's, again, albeit illegitimate marriage to Sarah, but nevertheless it's a valid marriage? The answer is that we go back to the marriage between Sarah and Reuven. And as far as the Achim is concerned, they were in a situation of Shalom B'Makom Mitzvah. Why? Because Levi was the one who took the initiative and was choletz, And according to Reish Lakish, now, as far as Sarah's status, vis-a-vis the other Achim, we'll call them Yehuda and Levi, her status is that of Eishes Ach, and there's no mitzvah of Yibum. Now, theoretically, there could have been a mitzvah of Yibum that was generated by Levi, who married Sarah and died, but the answer is no. Sarah is already an Eishes Ach Shalom b'makom mitzvah. By virtue of her marriage to Reuven, hence, there's no Zikas Yibum, no requirement of Yibum, no Chalitza with regard to the other brothers. But Rabbi Yochanan, on the other hand, holds that the status of Chalutza as an Isalav is Chal vis-a-vis all the other brothers. And in the case of Yibum b'makom Isalav, there's a requirement of Chalitza. So the other brothers, with the death of Levi, will have to give a Chalitza. So now let's go back and review. Thank you very much, Sean. You did a great job. You really saved me. But I must make a note to myself because this. Anyway, so let's go back to Reish Lakish and his cash on Levi. Not Levi the other, who illegitimately married Sarah after he gave it to her. But I mean Levi the Amorah. Levi was of the opinion that the Mishnah addresses even cases of an Isser, of a marriage be'Isser. And therefore, when Levi was Miyabim Sarah, right, Eishes Reuven, that marriage is valid because she's Chalutza and her status is that of Chayvei Lav. Now Levi dies. And now what happens? Levi Nasa you know what? The names are changing because he's confusing us by going back to a different diagram. And that's number Pei Tes. So let me quickly read Pei Tes. Reuven Shimon v'Levi Achim v'Nasa Shimon es Sarah v'Levi Nasa es Rivka. Now, Beis Levi below Bonim, B'Nafla Rivka Lefnei Ha'achim Liyim. Cholatz Shimon LeRivka, B'Nesra Olav Lidei Kach B'Lam, Asher Lo Yivne, Kemich Lo Bana, Shuv Lo Yivne. Ve'ala Achrim Nesra Leish Lakish B'Karetz. Shekevin Shepoka Zikas Hayibu B'Chalitzoso Shel Shimon. Ozeres Rivka Leos Ke'eshes Ach Sheyesh Lo Bon. Okay. B'Chaza Shimon B'Kidsha. So Shimon illegitimately married Rivka after giving her chalitza. But the Kedushin are valid. May Shimon below Bonim, B'Naflu Noshav, Lifnei Echav Liyim. We know that Shimon, number one, was Choletz Rivka. Number two, he married Rivka. Now he dies. Is Harei Reish Lakish Rivka Asura ala Achim Be'Iser Eishes Ach. Uptura Michalitza V'Yib. Poteres Gam Es Sora Soros. Oh, so that we have to emphasize that Shimon not only gave Chalitza to Rivka and married her, but he was also married to another woman named Sarah. Okay, so let's see how Rabbi Yochanan is going to reject this cash of Reish Lakish. Amar le. Why is this omitted from our Mishnah? Lefisha eina bitzoras tzara. But our Mishnah is only interested in pattering up the tzara and the tzoras tzara. V'lo matzinu tzoras tzara ela b'makom sheha erva eina asura ela al echad me'achri hames. So the erva is asura on one of the brothers and only on one of the brothers. The yibem echav ha'acher es hatzara, es tzaras erva zu, below ishacher bada, umeisaf hu below bottom enough with their rishon liibo, shaf ishto ashliya shal achiv hasheni, asura olav mishum shi tzaras tzarasa, shala erva rishona b'mikra, shecholatz lo ha'ach hames v'kit, shalo yitoche, shetisyamem li'af echad me'achim le'achar mos. So in other words, tzaras tzara is only possible when you have an erva vis-a-vis one of the potential yevamim, who's not an erva on the other yavam. So then, when the other yavam is miyavim her, she becomes, if he has another wife, she becomes a tzaras tzara. But in this case, the moment that, who do we say? We called him Shimon, and he died. So at that very moment, we're talking about the wives of Levi, all of whom are be'iser eishes ach shelo b'makom mitzvah. So there's no possibility of tzaras. That's how Reish Lakish is docha. He deflects the catch of Reish Lakish. So when I ask for lema le, why didn't Rabbi Yochanan give a better answer? And that is chayvim lavim. Chayvim lavim b'nei chalitza v'yibum nin. Why didn't Rabbi Yochanan, in a sense, Rabbi Yochanan was answering Reish Lakish on Reish Lakish's turf, but on his own turf, Reish Lakish would hold that all the brothers are chayvim lavim. And if all the brothers are chayvim lavim, then when Shimon dies, then they have to give, they have an option not only of chalitza, but even yibum. Sharei l'shitas Rabbi Yochanan lo rak l'gabi acholetz poka yisur kari shalish v'sar, ela af l'gabi shar ha'ach. In Keilu Rabbi Yochanan lo chayach p'tur yibum b'ofen zeh, ela shtein chayavos b'chalitza. Oh, wait a minute. Shtein chayavos b'chalitza. Not sure what he means by chalitza. Even shechayim lavim he b'nei chalitza v'yibum. Maybe talk about the Rabbanan. See, I'm not sure. Sorry, makar p'tur arayos u'me'achos isha v'lo lamadu mimena el l'chayve krisis. Aval isa lav eno poter mechalitza. Just missing one point over here, and that's yibum. Because before he said v'chayvi lav b'nei chalitza b'yibum. So here he has a footnote. He says midivrei Rashi, this number Zion, mashma shemin Torah he muteres af b'yibum. Right? Essay dochalosa sevies. Not sure why this is a losa sevies. El shegazru alel chacham. Bia Rishona to be a Shnia She'ema Mitzvahs Es. That's the sheet of Rashi. So we were more or less machabe to this, but not without understanding the reasoning behind it. But apparently, as far as Yibum is concerned, the din is based on Xeris Chachamim of Bir Rishona to be Shnia, that there's no way of overriding the losas. As far as Chalitza is concerned, since she has a full-fledged Zikas Yibum, because Chayve Lavan, according to Rabbi Yochanan, this Chayve Lavan, therefore she needs Chalitza. So why did Rabbi Yochanan need to stretch his arm out to answer L'Fishayda B'Tzoras Tzor? I mean, it's a brilliant answer, but there's such a more fundamental answer that he could have rejected Reish Lakish on the grounds that he himself holds that there's an Iser Kares vis-a-vis, there's an Iser Lav and a downgrade from Kares to Lav vis-a-vis all the brothers, which would mean that we do require Chalitza. Our answer is L'dvarav Ka'amar Lo. L'didi Chayve Lav Mem Chayve Lav B'nei Chalitza B'yibnin L'didcha Shechayve Krisis Ninu is L'fisha Ein Eino B'tzoras. But I don't need this answer Eino B'tzoras. But you do, Reish Lakish. As far as I'm concerned, Chayve Lav Mem are included in Chalitza and also in Yibum on a Doraisa. So that doesn't fit into our Mishnah. Our Mishnah is looking for cases where there is no Chalitza, there's no Yibum. Just giving an answer to quiet you down. And that sugya, Rabbi Yochanan Reish Lakish, is going to be the next sugya. So what I'd like to do now is take a look at the Yalkut HaBi'ur. We left in the middle of that Yerushalmi. Should be page Ayin Chet, which I'm pretty sure you have. Okay. So let's just quickly review the Ramban and his understanding of Yerushalmi. That we're talking about a case where someone was Megaresh Chutz Mi HaYavam. So as far as the Yavam is concerned, she still remains an Eshes Ish. And therefore that Erva should pater up Hatzara in event that this fellow's brother married her and died. And we're holding now in the answer to Yerushalmi that when the Yavam marries her, then Paka Ishus Rishon. And therefore, with his death, there's a brand new Zikas Yibum. And Al Yidei Ishus Hasheni, this is the last thing we learned on Thursday, is his Naska Me Ishus Harishon Legam. Ulefize Ein Makom Lekush Susham Yisrael Liachar Shenisa Leach Areini Teres Aflu Yavam Liachar Misas Echa. So the Yerushalmi is assuming that this is a case of Ashes Ish, which should generate a tour of Yibum and therefore patch up the Tzara. But according to the Bavli, even Rabbi Elazar agrees that the Floni is allowed to marry her after someone else marries her and dies, because that someone else who marries her and dies removes the original Ishus, and therefore she's no longer an Ishus Ish. But according to Yerushalmi, that's not so. So again, we get back to the Kasha Shalmi. Now, Shalmi is asking, in a case of Chutz Ploni and Gerushin, we have an erev, a relationship of Ashes each. That itself should remove Yibum and Pater of the Tzara. Well, what's going to be the answer to Yushalmi? And that is that Af legabe hayavam igrusha. Right, so the yavam was allowed to marry her. I'm sorry. The yavam is the chutz v'plon. I got confused. So she was allowed to be married to his brother, and now when that brother dies, she falls for yibum to the chutz v'plonim, and she's considered a grusha. Asura lo rak machmas tnai. Yemtiv tzalomer and shenet shevas ikeshes sishlu gamba mikom komeinu poter soroso. So we're going back to the logic of Tosfos, that this is a very different kind of erev here, this Ashes. It's not similar to another erev which patters up to Tzara, because in this case, if Yibum were to take place, then it means that she was never married to the late brother, because that would be a bittul atnai, and that would be mevatel the get. Okay. Now, liachar shehisik Ramban she'ein bi'eit balas hatnai poteres saros mishgrusha af legabe hayom adayin istapek ha'im hi atzma tura af min hachalitza. So maybe we could go a step further. We were applying the logic of Tosfos to explain why she doesn't pater patsara. But maybe we should go a step further. We should say that there's not even a zikas yibum, and there's not even chalitza. And the logic behind that is because on the tzad that he would be miyabim her, it would mean that she was never married to the brother lechatchila, because he was never a kiyum t'nai in the get. So the get is batel, and she's an Ashes each. And the brother the late brother could not have married her. Maybe that's enough to even pater her from chalitza. Oh, she'af she'eni yechol lisyabim lo, mikol makom yichayeves b'chalitza. Again, there's no possibility of Yibum, because if Yibum were to be implemented, she would not be an Ashes each at all to the late brother, because the get would be batel because of bittul atnai. That's only on the side of Yibum, but there should be a zikas Yibum, at least as far as chalitza is concerned. Or do we say no? The chalitza and Yibum are one package deal. And if there's no possibility of Yibum, because the Yibum would undermine the whole status of an Ashes each and a Yavam, then ipso facto, there's no requirement of Chalitza as well. The Hisik, Baruch Hashem, this is intuitive, his conclusion, his final ruling is Eino Shi Pateres Bi Chalitza as well. That's the Ramban. But the Rashba says, no, she's obligated in Chalitza. Why? Because Einani Kori Ba Kol Sheina Ol Liyavam Eina Ol Chalitza. Right? She really should be Ol Liyibum in the present situation. It's just that the Kiyum of the Yibum before would undermine the mitzvah of Yibum. But there was originally a Zikas Yibum. So to say that she's not Ola Yibum, and therefore, if some factor she's not Ola Chalitza, because Yibum and Chalitza are a package deal, that's not true. She's not, quote unquote, Eino Ola Li. Shelo nemar klal zeh el b'misha eino misyabemes machmas iser erva shabo. Aval balas hatnai af al pi shem tisyaben yivatel haget lemafre yibatel haget lemafreya v'teyose ervas eishes is mikomako beintayim eina erva. Right now, in the present state, she's not an erva. She falls for evil. Tnai is like an external issue. Now, I want to take a break from this paragraph and fast forward to the other Rashba, which is in the middle of the left column here on Ayin Ches. I presume you have Ayin Ches, am I right? He says, Hikshar Rashba, according to one Mandi Omar, who says, Beplugta Kamayri, Omalo Shitza Af Krovas Chalutzosam. This touches on the sugi that we just learned now of Rabbi Yochanan Reish Lakish. Not sure what he means by krovas chalutzos. Usually we talk about saras chalutzos. Shel Rabbi Akiva hi asura olav minat Torah. Yesh lo liftar es sarasa miyibum vechalitza. He doesn't tell you exactly what the case is. It's interesting. In the Gemara itself, he gives you the diagrams. But here, the Alpha Biurim, he assumes you know what's going on. What would you say, Rabbi? Say, if, let's say, a woman falls for Yibum, right? And she has relatives, let's say a sister. What's the relationship between the Yavam, who now gave Chalitza to, well, let's call her Rachel? What's his relationship to Leah, her sister? L'chora, she should be Achos Kukas. Said it was a problem. Maybe the Rabbanan, but nevertheless a problem. So now what happens if he marries Leah illegitimately? So Leah should now pater a patsara. He did a chos kukas. He gives the answer that this would not be a second category. This would be a case of someone who's related to his wife. So just to finish it up, he says, "V'tirei shalom nishna b'mishnah eladinim shatana sober kamosim la'aloch." This is the answer of the Rash that we don't accept Rabbi Yochanan. I'm sorry, Rabbi Akiva, and therefore the Mishnah does not reflect his sheep. B'chosen Yeshuos kosta shelachor b'lav hafilo kosher lidi shekain l'Rabbi Akiva chalutzoso ike ishto shekain hakora haTorah kora bias imkein harei b'chlal kol krovas ishto ashnuyas b'mishnasei. This is an Isur Krovas Ishto. Now, what would be a case of Krovas Ishto? How did she get married to his brother? I don't understand. If you have two, because he's married to his sister, and his brother's not married to his sister. So his brother could marry Rachel. Wait a minute, no, his brother can't marry Rachel because we just said that there's an Easter love. Does anybody have the case here? He doesn't give us a diagram. What would be a case of a chos chalutzasa? He says going to Rabbi is considered like a chos ish. But how did she fall for Hebrew? That's I don't get it. Reuben was married to two sisters. That doesn't make any sense.
I mean, he was married.
Oh, Reuben and Shimon married two sisters, right? So Reuben and Shimon married two sisters. They both died. And now one of the brothers gave chalitza. Let's say Rachel. And the other brother was married to Leah. He died. So Leah is a chos chalutzas. So the question, right? Is that the case? Yeah, two brothers married two sisters, right? So now, gives chalitza to his brother's sister, and now the other brother dies, and she falls to Yibur, but she is now a chos chalutzas. Got that right. So if she's a chos chalutzasa, that should be another case of erva, and you should add it to the list. The answer is no. That's the old case of Ashes of a chos ishta. That's a chos ishta. Why? Because Rabbi Akiva equates chalutza with ishta. Okay, then. So tomorrow we'll finish up on that Rashba that we started today. And then we'll study the Sugi Reish Lakish Rabbi Yochanan. I mean, like take it from the start, take it from the top. It's a great thing.